if you can see him. He's decided he wants to move from New South Wales down to Victoria, so he's hitched a ride with me. I told him it's not a good idea, but he didn't listen. He's building himself a little house on the side of the car, so all welcome. I've stopped in the tiny little hamlet of Tullamore, which is just down the road from Tottenham, right? And Tullamore has a Irish connection because there's a big Irish clover as we came into town. Funny little place. I mean, it's got a 24-hour BP there, and it's got this brand new, I've never seen them, a fuel pump that new. I didn't even know it was a fuel pump. This is the memorial park for their returned servicemen. There's no mention of the Boers, but that's, oh, hang on. There we go. But this is not while we're here. I just need to use the loo. And it's just around 8:30. I left Warren at 6:30. Quite a good night's sleep. Although with my arthritic hips, sleeping in the swag, essentially on the ground, is not good for me. But yeah, I had a good night's sleep. I had some steak and salad that I cooked on my little gas cooker last night. That's their memorial to their World War. Look how many names are, like there's 3 young husbands or the brothers. That's what this country gave to Britain, you know. What did Britain give to us? They had to turn their back on us when the Japanese invaded because they were busy against the Germans. But anyway, I don't want to go into that. So yeah, the next stop is Condobolin, I think. This is right in the central New South Wales I am now. And there was a sign saying that it might have been Tottenham is the very central heart of New South Wales. Look at this. I thought it was an emu feather. I have seen some emus. All this little abandoned church which is open. Not often you get to see something like this completely unspoilt. The gate's open. Let's go in and have a look. Watch out for snakes. Sort of a fiberboard church. It's not old stone or anything. Tiny. Doors open. Floorboards will be rotten. Now you're here, Father. Oh, Father. I got a wee problem with the drink, Father. Oh, here's the prayer book. Oh, Father. A wee problem with the drink. Oh, look at this. The rest of that prayer book. An old BP tin for men's sheds. Oh, this is brilliant. Unless there's a fucking hell. Swallows. I was about to say, unless there's a dead body in here. Hello, guys. I won't disturb you. I thought they were bats for a second. Oh, Father. It's not sort of hundreds of years old. I'd probably put it down at, I don't know, 60, 70 years old maybe. No idea the denomination. There's rusty stuff over there, which would be good, but okay. Just thought I'd stop and stretch my legs. Boschfontein, 10th of September 1900. Since the Transvaal was annexed to the British Crown on the 1st of September 1900, a tougher approach to the commandos had been ordered from Army High Command. Farms of men who were known to be out on commando were to be destroyed and the inmates sent to camps for their protection. The 1st New South Wales Mounted Rifles with Colonel Delisle was part of General Ridley's column and was sent off to pacify the fertile valley to the south of the Magaliesberg. At Hekpoort, they lined up with General Clement's column. The following letter from Lieutenant F. Livingston Learmonth from Sheerpoort, dated the 14th of September 1900, gives a good account of the nature of the land that the troops had to contend with. This is taken from the Sydney Morning Herald on the 20th of October 1900. Quote, "We left Hekpoort on the morning of the 10th together with a force under General Clements, which consisted of the Worcesters, the Northumberland Fusiliers and 4 companies of the Border Regiment, 1 5-inch gun and a battery of horse artillery and pom-poms, while our own column comprised Colonel Legg's, Colonel Dawson's and Colonel Delisle's corps, of which latter we are still incorporated, together with P Battery and 3 or 4 pom-poms. Our whole force would number about 4,000. As we proceeded up the valley, which lies to the south of the Magaliesberg Range, the country gets more hilly as it opens out in extent and the rich flats get smaller. We had not got more than 3 or 4 miles when our left was fired on from hills to the north and also from a hill in front. We quickly made dispositions to stop this and we moved more to our right while the pom-poms played on the position in front, which was quickly evacuated. We then saw several hundred Boers making off to what looked like a strong position 2 or 3 miles in their rear, and so it proved to be. The valley here is about 4 miles wide and there is an outcrop of ironstones which crossed it at right angles from one side to the other, varying in height from, say, 20 feet to 200 feet, forming the most perfect line of natural forts that I've ever seen. The ground in front was quite open for 2,000 yards, and the Boers had burnt all the grass. This natural fortress was held from end to end by from 700 to 1,000 rifles with 2 guns in rear. As we commenced to traverse the open, we were met by a very hot fire and had to seek cover. Twice we essayed to reach a few rocks halfway across the open by brilliant charges of our mounted men, first by 80 of the Western Australians, the Whammies, and again by 3 squadrons of Robert's Horse. But in each case they had to retire in the face of the heavy fire with the loss of a few horses. Then we waited until the infantry began to move up to our right, and by this time we'd got a mile or 2 ahead of them. Then began the hottest concentrated artillery fire that I've yet seen. For an hour and a half, 2 batteries of artillery, that is, 12 guns and pom-poms, poured an incessant hail of shell and shrapnel onto the line of koppies. It was a veritable inferno. The Boer guns being placed so far in rear for fear of eventual capture did us no damage, as their shell for the most part fell short. Under cover of this fire, the Worcesters, in the usual beautiful open formation of the British infantry, marched straight at a low koppie, some 1,200 yards in front of the main Boer position, and took it, and then from that cover assisted us to pour in rifle fire. There was absolutely no means of turning the flank of the enemy without crossing the high hills on the other side of the valley, and they had sharpshooters posted there also. We waited for the artillery to do their work. About 5 o'clock the 5-inch gun came into action and there was a perceptible lull in the fire as we watched this gun plumping in huge charges of lyddite with the utmost precision time after time on the crest of the koppies. With the naked eye one could see the effects of each shot. great masses of rock being detached from the face of the hills, and the concussion seemed to shake the ground, though we were fully 3,000 yards away. Of the effects on the defenders on these particular kopjes I cannot speak, but no man would have taken up the position from choice. However, darkness came on before we could dislodge the enemy, who up to this time had made a very plucky defence. The General's orders were that we should take the position at all costs, so nothing remained but a night attack, though with our previous experience of Boer methods we could not believe they would continue to hold the ground after dark. Our men were withdrawn to get some food, and our horses were fed and watered, and at 8:30, just after the moon had risen, we'd fallen in and given our orders. A simultaneous attack was proposed along the whole line. Not a shot was to be fired, and the final rush was to be made at the point of the bayonet. So we marched out into the half-darkness, accentuated by the blackened veldt under us. A long, thin line extended to 5 yards interval, and speaking for the men of my own regiment, all as keen as mustard. We covered the 2,000 yards in a little over half an hour, and as we neared the kopjes, we fixed bayonets, but still not a shot was fired, and we finally clambered up the rocks seeking Boers, and finding none. They'd all fled from their splendid position just as the moon rose, so we heard afterwards. So our victory was bloodless. We kept a picket of 200 men on the kopje that night, and the remainder marched into camp quite ready for sleep. Next day we found the bodies of 6 Boers on the rocks, and from other sources we gathered that the Boer casualties mounted to about 40. We'd lost 2 killed and 15 wounded from the Worcesters, and 2 gunners wounded. The exact spot where the battle took place is, I believe, called Boschfontein, and lies some 10 miles east of Oliphant's Neck. Okay, we're in, I think you'd say Condobolin, or maybe Condobolin. It sounds a bit like a goblin, but I think probably Condobolin. But they would never say that around here, they'd just call it Condo. You gotta go to Condo, mate. I drove along a road called the Bogan Way, which is an Australian term for like a redneck is a bogan. I relate to very much, but yeah, even though the Australian Monuments website is no longer online, the New South Wales Monument website is, and it has helped me find these New South Wales monuments. And this is a beaut, an absolute cracker. I can see it from here. It's a beaut. Well, here's a fellow we can meet. Who's this? Willie Beach. He's got a star. Oh, look at this. He came to Australia 1910. He served in the Staving 8 during the Boer War, was awarded the English King and Queen medals. I'll have to look up that Staving 8, I've never heard of it. He was in the yeomanry. In 1914, at 36, he enlisted in C Company, 2nd Battalion in the Australian Imperial Forces, known as the Condobolin Diehards. They're all volunteers. They were amongst the first at Gallipoli on the 25th of April 1915, and Beach was assigned to the dangerous Quinn's Post, only 500 metres from the Turks. Within 12 days he was promoted to Lance Corporal, and he invented a trench periscope rifle, which is one of them, right? And they started making them in factories. He was invalided back to Australia, General Birdwood, the British commander of the entire Dardanelles forces, wrote that over 2,000 periscopes were made on the Anzac Cove beach. After he came back to Condobolin, he became a recruitment officer until 1919, and he settled on a property called Reefdale. He was a bricklayer and he was constructing houses. The Melrose House, the Chinese ceremonial oven in the cemetery, the Oxley Monument. And he turned his practical bush skills to other inventions, including a special bed for the hospital, based upon his experience when he was hospitalised with fever in Alexandria. He's in the cemetery. He died in 1929. What a brilliant guy, eh? What a mind. I've got to look up the staving 8. So it's spelt wrong. It should be the starving 8, a nickname given to Rundle's 8th Division, or the 8th Brigade of the British Army during the Boer War. The unit was famously under-rationed during the conflict, sometimes surviving on only 1.5 biscuits a day. The nickname was from the severe food shortages and difficult marching conditions experienced by General Leslie Rundle's command in the Orange River Colony around the time they reached Germiston. Soldiers under Rundle were known to be so hungry that they would have seized food, yet they strictly followed orders regarding receipts for food items taken local farmhouses. And that 8th Division was part of the British effort to conquer the Boer republics after the Black Week defeats and debacles. Because I certainly don't know everything about the Boer War by any means, not by any stretch. But this is a cracker. I can tell already. I was about to say I'll put it on a par with the Geelong Monument. You might want to look that up if you're into handsome, ornate monuments of the Boer War. But no, I'd have to step back because the Geelong one's got a resting lion. But this is still fantastic. Look at it. The lamp at the top's been broken off. That wouldn't have worked for a long time. In memory of the soldiers of Condobolin in the district who lost their lives in the service of the Empire, South Africa, 1899 to 1902. The monument was erected as a tribute by the residents. I really have trouble stepping over things with these hips of mine. Can't get over the chain. Alright, this will work. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. It used to be a fountain. You can see that there. There's maybe the oak leaves of victory. But there's that, the crossed sabres and the helmet. We see that in Murchison in Victoria. I didn't have to step over chains, it's open. Lieutenant Robert White, Sergeant Davison, Trooper Wardle, Trooper Cameron. Those wires going up the top there like that lantern used to illuminate at night. And there's the wreath again. This is like sandstone that's crumbling. Right. And there's the other access to the fountain. That would have been beautiful seeing that lantern glowing at night in the park. We're down by the river. I'm not sure what river that is, but it'd be lovely to jump in there in the heat of summer. We're in central New South Wales, not far from Cobar, which I seem to remember is one of the hottest places in New South Wales. There's the crossed 303s. There's some information here we'll get. There's a bronze plaque. I'll get some personal photos now.
Britons once did loyally declaim about the way we ruled the waves. Every Briton's song was just the same when singing of a soldier brave. All the world had heard it, wondered why we sang, and some have learned the reason why. But we're forgetting it, and we're letting it fade away and gradually die. Fade away and gradually die.
De Wet loses guns and transport at Rensburg's Drift on the 27th of October 1900. Lieutenant Frederick Livingston Learmonth of the 1st New South Wales Mounted Rifles gives us more details on the fight. Quote, a march of some 14 or 15 miles brought us at 8 a.m. onto the Boer lager of the night before, with the fires hardly yet cold. And as it turned out afterwards, we were only half an hour too late to see the tail of their convoy. Some of the tracks led straight on and some bore off to the right, and we were uncertain which way De Wet and the guns had gone. We spent about 4 hours trying to get the information from natives and others, and finally we chose the right-hand track, that leading to Rensburg Drift and Paris, and for once our information was correct. We had to pass over rather open rolling country for a few miles until the road closed into a high narrow valley which led for 10 or 12 miles to the Vaal. We all thought that the tops of these hills would have been held, and it was here that our men did some of the prettiest work of the day, climbing up these hills and making from hilltop to hilltop, clearing the ground as they went and never delaying the column for a minute, and calling forth eulogies from General Knox, who said he had never seen such artistic scouting before. The WAs cleared the hill on our left flank in the same way and captured 12 prisoners. We pushed on down the valley, the scent getting hotter at every mile until we were finally checked for a few minutes at a small kopje overlooking the road by a few of the enemy who fired on our men. This check served a good purpose. The thorn bush was very thick here, and as our men scattered through it, they dropped onto a Boer gun, a 12-pounder Krupp, planted in a mass of dense bush. Great was our joy, for although it was minus the breech block, it showed us how closely we were pressing the enemy when they had to abandon it. We tied it up in triumph behind an empty wagon and set a guard on it. Meanwhile we pushed on, and at about 4 p.m. we sighted the Vaal. What was more cheering still, the whole Boer army, which had just crossed the drift, flying for all it was worth, evidently making down the river to try and recross the river at the next drift. How the men and horses brightened up, although they'd been going for over 12 hours and had already come between 30 and 40 miles. "Make way for the guns," was the order, and as we opened out, Captain Sterling and his pom-pom and Captain Lamont and his two 12-pounders dashed through us, while we horsemen set sail on their flanks. Half a mile more, and the guns opened fire on the enemy, who, to our surprise, then made off back onto their tracks straight across our front. It appeared that Le Galais, who was only a few miles on our right and hearing our guns, crossed the river and took the Boers in face, cutting off their retreat in that direction and forcing them to the open veldt in the direction of Vredefort and the railway line. Meanwhile, a few Boers pluckily sought cover and attempted to arrest our advance across the river, but Colonel de Lisle passed the word around that the drift must be crossed at all hazards. So each troop leader acted for himself and charged down with his troops to the river, Colonel Knight and Captain Dove crossing on the left, and Captain Bennett and his squadron further down to the right. We found drifts for ourselves as the river was very low. Meanwhile, the Boers had got a long start, but Le Galais was on their right, keeping them from the hills and fairly close to them. It was better than a good fox hunt. Every man's blood was up. Nothing would have stopped them, but there was little fear of that. They were fairly on the run, every man for himself, and the devil take the hindmost. Wagons were dotted about, and pack mules cast off every here and there. But oh, for 1 hour's more daylight. Already the sun had gone down, and our guns were still peppering away from both right and left. Suddenly we saw Le Galay's pom-pom fire close to an isolated kopje that the Boers were trekking past, and immediately after there was a tremendous explosion, and everybody with one voice said, "There goes an ammunition wagon." And so it proved, for when we reached the spot we found a few pieces of ironwork and the mangled remains of a couple of Boers, half a head and trunk here, a leg there, and so on, with every stitch of clothing burnt off, a gruesome sight. But it was now absolutely dark and threatening rain, the distant rumbling of thunder coming closer every minute. It took us a long time to collect our scattered forces. Soon we joined Le Galay's brigade and heard from them that they too had captured another gun. This is one of U Battery's guns captured at Sanna's post, and curiously enough it was U Battery attached to Le Galay who made the capture. We all felt glad that it should be so. As we stumbled along in the darkness, I came onto a Boer wagon stuck in a drift, and one of the first things I laid hands on was a new 5-inch helio in a case, which I put round my shoulder as a trophy of war. We formed a sort of camp by 10 o'clock when down came the rain in torrents, and as we were without wagons, blankets and food, they had been left behind at the drift. You can imagine we had not a bed of roses, but somehow we slept on in a sort of way through it all, as the men were dog-tired, and the only thing was that next morning we were pretty soppy all over. A few hours' sun next morning mended that, and our wagons came up and gave us some breakfast. Well, just climbed out of the little Holden Astra, which has performed more than admirably. We've done over 3,000 kilometres and we're in Hay. We're about 3 hours from home now. Over 300 kilometres to go. And we're at our last Boer War monument on this road trip. I saw some Aussie rules goalposts on the other side of this oval, but these jokers are playing rugby. They should know better. But this is magnificent, isn't it? Look at the gold lettering. We don't see that very often. These are shilling subscriptions to perpetuate the memory of the Hay District volunteers who lost their lives in the South African War. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Everybody put in a shilling and you get this. Beautiful polished granite. Look, it used to be a drinking fountain as well. A lot of them were. It's in brilliant condition. Here's the casualties. Yeah, Alec died of wounds. Alec Aberline died of wounds. Peter Clancy killed in action, October 1900. Robertson killed in action. William Reagan killed in action. And John Mayer, Lieutenant. No details of the actions, but I guess they've got to fill all the lettering in. Nothing on these sides. You can maybe see where the water used to come out. No lantern or anything, but highly polished marble, I think it is. It's like a granite plinth. So, hello there. So it's magnificent, isn't it? Pine tree in the back, palm tree behind it. There's like an urn at the top there. So it's been a fantastic trip. We've seen lots of monuments, haven't we? One of the locals chatting to us. Looks like they might have sort of solar lights here at night. Be very pretty. It's parked, there's a big lake over there with the ducks. Alright guys, it's time for me to get boogieing along and get home. So this is from the Sydney Morning Herald, dated the 7th of May 1903, regarding the Hay Boer War monument. It says, yesterday afternoon the largest assembly of people ever seen at Hay attended at the Hay Park to witness the unveiling of the memorial to the Hay District volunteers who lost their lives in South Africa. Proceedings commenced with a procession of school children, friendly societies, the fire brigade, church lads brigade, the Hay band, and returned soldiers. Speeches were given by the Mayor, Alderman Gibson, and Mr. Charles Hitchcock, the Honourable Secretary, and a patriotic oration was delivered by the Bishop of Riverina. Fully 2,000 people were present and proceedings were very enthusiastic. The memorial is in the form of a granite drinking fountain, 17 foot high, and bears the inscription, erected by means of shilling subscriptions to perpetuate the memory of the Hay District volunteers who lost their lives in the South African War 1899 to 1902, and also bears the names of the 5 soldiers and dates of their deaths.